Everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Adorkable Rachel, and it's time for another episode of Rachel Review, so let's just hop into it. The Nutcracker and the Four Realms is another live-action movie that was produced by the Disney company, and it is not a reboot, thankfully, but it is an adaptation, and Disney is like 80% adaptation, so okay, whatever, sure, fine. But it also doesn't really surprise me that this movie exists, because to my knowledge, the Nutcracker, both the original book and the ballet, are in the public domain. So, leave it to Disney to swoop in and exploit the hell out of a well-known copyright-free property. The Nutcracker in the Four Realms focuses on a young girl named Keira, played by Mackenzie, who goes to a Christmas party with her family while also looking for an important key that will open a gift from her mother who passed away. Again with the dead mothers, Disney! She discovers a different and magical world where she meets lots of colorful characters like the Sugar Plum Fairy, the Mouse King, and of course the Nutcracker, even though we never see him in the form of a nutcracker, but okay. And Keira soon finds out that there's a war going on amongst the four realms of this land, and goes on a mission with the others to find the previously mentioned key, as it turns out it could be the key to restore harmony to the land. See, I made it funny. Okay, so if you're familiar with the original Nutcracker, either the book or the ballet, then you know this is not meant to be an exact representation or adaptation of either. But the movie does borrow a lot from both versions, especially Tchaikovsky's score from the ballet. In fact, one thing that I do want to point out that I really do kind of actually like in this movie is that it does have some ballet numbers in it. It's not only a nice homage to the ballet, but also you just don't see this kind of thing in movies that much. And although it is kind of brief and they do have some really annoying and obvious narration over it, it was still a kind of bold creative choice. Also what was kind of cool was they'd have this throwback to Fantasia where they'd show the orchestra playing and they'd have the conductor in the middle with all the colors and the shadows around them. Kind of random, but I appreciate it. And probably the best thing in this movie, Mackenzie, she is a star. One thing that I noticed about her acting choices is that she kind of had a tendency to just let the character absorb what was happening in the situation. She took her time in the moment. She didn't just like rush into anything. You could really see what the actor and what the character are thinking. You can really see what's going on in her head, as a good actor should be able to portray. And even though a lot of this world does look fake, and we'll get to that in a minute, I still believed that she was in a new magical world, and it was actually kind of engaging to see her go through that. She's come a long way since playing a half-human, half-vampire hybrid in Breaking Dawn, and she just really shines in this movie. This is the first major acting role for Jaden Farroa Knight, and he did a pretty good job too. I honestly don't know if I have much to say about his performance, but I mean, it was fine. He seemed to work really well with what he was given. And while Keira Knightley as the Sugar Plum Fairy is really not a performance that stands out so much, I still have to give her props that she did something different. She always plays these really strong and dignified characters, which is always great, but in this movie, she just kind of had an opportunity to just go out there and be silly. And she looks like she's having fun doing it. Other performances in this movie were fine, no one stands out, except maybe Morgan Freeman, but he's only in like 2 scenes, so I don't know what to say about that. Now obviously there is a lot of CGI in this movie, but to be fair, it actually is really beautiful. This is of course coming out around the holidays, and this movie does take place at Christmas, and the imagery in this movie does make me feel like I'm experiencing the Christmas season. It may have a lot of computer imagery, but it does at least look nice, and the colors are really vibrant and beautiful. And believe me, that is the least of this movie's problems, because besides the positives that I just mentioned, this film is so hollow. Oh my gosh. Does this movie have problems? I will give this movie just a little bit of credit and say that as far as Disney live action movies go, it's definitely better than A Wrinkle in Time or the Alice in Wonderland film that came out, but it's still not that good of a movie. First of all, there is a lot of telling and not showing in this story. Keira Knightley's character at one point explains that all of the people in this world were toys at one time or another, and okay, alright, sure, I can absolutely get behind that, except for the fact that we basically never see any of these characters as toys? Why isn't there a flashback about this? Or why couldn't you in the beginning of the movie show us toy equivalents, almost like foreshadowing? It's just a little distracting when you talk about something like that, but then you never show us that. And something else that made it really hard to absorb this brand new world that we go into is the fact that the real world and this like new fantasy-ish kind of world, they're not that different from each other. They're both very colorful and they're very vibrant. They both have a lot of CGI in them, and I just feel like it would have been more awesome to see this brand new exciting world if there was just something about the real world that was a bit more dull. Just something that would have differentiated the two different worlds, like a color choice or like different camera angles. Also, the movie is called The Nutcracker and the Four Realms, but we barely get a glance of any of those realms. We meet the leaders of those four realms and they all seem really interesting and like it would be really cool to hang out with them for the rest of the film, but no, we just don't. No, I don't get it. This seems like such a missed opportunity. If you're gonna have a movie where you set up these four different realms, then why couldn't you put out a narrative where the characters go to all of them? Why wasn't this a movie where the protagonist had to go to all four of them for whatever plot-related reason? I mean, I don't know, maybe that seems way too similar to something like Alice in Wonderland, but at least you'd be using what you set up. And it sounds like it would have been a lot more interesting than this movie. And just a couple of pet peeves as far as this movie being an adaptation. You know what? I don't really mind that a lot of the characters are switched around and play different roles. That's totally fine. Use inspiration, do something new with it. Okay, I get it. But I'm just so surprised at how much they did leave out. This is a movie that takes inspiration from a ballet from the late 1800s that featured a lot of different cultures and backgrounds in their dance numbers, and we don't see any of that in this movie. Not even like little homages to them. What, in this day and age, why wouldn't you do that? Maybe that kind of stuff seemed irrelevant, or maybe they thought that was a little racist or too risky, I don't know, but I just felt like this was such another great opportunity that you missed out on. As far as I know, no one's ever had like a huge problem with those things being represented in the ballet, so why would we have an issue with it here? And oh my gosh, Disney, what is up with you and doing the surprise twist villain again? This is just getting so tiring, you guys. Like, I get it. It worked in Frozen, and you want to exploit it as much as you can, but this is becoming a really, really annoying gimmick for you. Stop doing that! That being said, this movie doesn't really have a very strong connection to the original Nutcracker, except for some of the characters have the same names and everything, but I have to wonder then, what was the point? The plots are crazy different, and this one is altered so much to create a more cinematic story, and even that's kind of debatable. And making changes or just drawing inspiration for something isn't a bad thing. Sometimes things have to be switched around and changed for an adaptation, but what really bothers me about this particular movie is that they just missed out on so much, and they just don't use or explore enough with what is given to us. And I just didn't feel too much walking away from it. This movie is just, it's not that great, unfortunately. I went along with it okay during the first half, but once we got to the second half, it just really lost me. It's very corny, it's predictable, the morals are super obvious, and overall, it's just weak as hell. Weak setups and payoffs, weak usage of characters, weak sauce climax and ending. If I haven't already made it clear, this movie just leaves so much to be desired. But at least it wasn't an overly complicated movie. Yeah, the rules of this world don't make a ton of sense, but at least for the most part, it was pretty simple and direct with its storytelling, and that's how it should be. It just would have been nicer to see a lot more payoffs, I guess, and yeah, that kind of is where I think this movie really suffers. At the very least, though, it does at least feel like a Christmas movie. It's got some nice atmosphere, and a decent cast, and some lovely music and colors. It's not a fantastically great Christmas movie, and even though it's kind of cliche and pretty dull for the most part, it's still a harmless movie, and I can see that probably a lot of kids who watch this may look back on it with fond nostalgia in the future. And I do feel like this is one of the few live-action Disney films that I've seen in a while that has some heart behind it. Kids, I'm sure, will get into it just fine, and if they walk away loving it, then I don't really think that's a bad thing. I mean, maybe after watching this they'll be encouraged to see the original Ballet. If you want a decent new holiday film for your family, then this is not that bad of a choice, especially if you have kids, and I think that there's definitely something in this movie that everyone in the family can enjoy. But for the average adult and moviegoer, I wouldn't expect that much out of it. You're not gonna get a really big adventurous journey, and you're not gonna get a lot of emotion out of it, so it's probably a better family movie, unfortunately. So those are my thoughts on Disney's The Nutcracker and the Four Realms. So now I want to know, guys, what did you think of the movie? Also let me know, what's your favorite adaptation of The Nutcracker, and are there any other movies coming out soon that you want me to review? Well, go ahead and leave your comments below, be sure to like and share, and if you're new and like what you saw here, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and also be sure to hit the little bell button down there to get notified when new stuff comes out, because I